All right. Well, first and foremost, let's talk to a new member if he's available, Ken Burns. Hi, Ken.
Right.
I'm virtually waving at you right now. Now, if I remember right, you joined us for a couple of meetings as a guest earlier this year, and then you just joined in the last week or two.
Correct. Correct.
Good. And could you just briefly give us a hi, hello, what kind of stuff you shoot, what you expect to get out of the club, that kind of thing?
I was just talking to a couple guys here. Back in Thanksgiving time last year, I bought a new toy. I bought a new I bought a Fujifilm X-T4. I've been Googling for I don't know 2-3 years, and finally pulled the trigger on it last Thanksgiving. What am I going to get out of it? Expectations? I read about a few groups in the area. I live in Thornton, so this is no small feat for me to be here. Thank you very much. It's making the trek. This group sounds like it kind of fits a bill to push me to do more stuff with the camera. I've been using film stock, and I converted to digital, I don't know, in 2000, maybe 2005, I don't know. I'd never really been real avid serious, not professional, and I don't want to do that. But I just want to get better at the tool. And I think with the competitions like today that you guys have, I'll be encouraged to do more.
Awesome. Well, that's what we would hope to do. Between competitions, our programs, the mentoring capabilities that we have, and opportunities for you that we have, plus one meeting I'll talk about in just a second here. I think you will find yourself being encouraged by a bunch. So, we're glad to have you. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have two guests in the room,
Oh, we do?
Yes.
Okay.
first timers.
Would one of those be
Goddaughter and
Linda,
godmother.
perhaps?
We're going to spend some quality time together doing photography. Please introduce yourself and tell us something about your photography.
Nancy Shepherd. I'm from Huntsville, Alabama, and I'm visiting here for a couple of months, and I enjoy photography just as a hobby. I have a Olympus EM1 Mark III, and I like to take landscape photography.
And your goddaughter?
I'm Hannah. I don't own a camera house yet, but I'm hiding along with Nancy, and we'll be hanging out with her. And then for while she's visiting, I live here full time.
Welcome. Thank you. And
Very nice. Well, yes, welcome to you.
club, including myself.
Okay.
Okay, so our other guest that I see here on Zoom is Bailey Mulford. Bailey, if you'll unmute and just give us a real quick how you found us, that kind of stuff, what you shoot, those things. We appreciate it.
Hi, thank you. I used to shoot a lot more about a decade ago. In high school, college, I got really into film. And I am just kind of looking for a community, a way to get back into it with some like-minded folks.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we will fit that bill to be like-minded. We shall see how that goes. Okay, so a couple things I want to talk about, upcoming meetings. Obviously, August 30th, next week, is our outing to downtown Littleton. Bailey and the other guest, you are welcome to come. We do have it posted on our website. I just dropped a link in the chat so you can go and take a look at it, Bailey, or if you just go to focuscolorado.com, you can find it there in the sidebar. David Besson will be leading that outing, and folks will be gathering at 5 o'clock at Bega Park in Littleton. Folks will wander around downtown Littleton for a couple hours and then get together at 7 o'clock at the View House Restaurant to grab a bite, have a little chat, share photos and such. So I would encourage everybody to attend. If you send an email to vicepresident@focuscolorado.com, then David will get that information. And I'll also remind everybody that attending any outings that we have, you have to sign one of our liability waiver forms. The form is linked on the event on the website. And I'll also be, since we don't have a large crowd of the club here tonight, I'll be emailing everybody tomorrow with a reminder and information about the event and about that form. Our next program meeting, September, we've got Dan Greenberg who will be presenting to us about car photography and editing images. Dan, are you in the room? Are you there? Do you want to add something to
I was gonna say, even if you're not
the
a
brief
car
stuff I gave you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Even if you're not a car photographer, you'll probably benefit a lot from this because probably 2/3 of the whole presentation is gonna be editing and screwing around and alternate techniques and filters and fun things that I try to do to keep myself amused. And I will be doing it from my house instead of here, which means I'm gonna have my full entire Battle computer ready to go with all its 8 million filters and 250 horsepower, 18 hard drives, all that kind of fun stuff. So it'll be the first Zoom from that part of my house. So I'm getting all set up for that now. So it should be fun. Anyway.
Are you contacting Excel Energy for the, increase?
Yeah. We just had all solar put in, so the whole thing is solar. We have something like, I just had.
I hope it's not cloudy.
No, it doesn't matter, 'cause I've got 25 Tesla batteries. in my
Okay.
garage. So, I got all this just for this presentation.
No, you're kidding.
So yeah, it'll be good. So like I said, even if you're not that much into cars, I mean, it's basically gonna be 3 parts. It's gonna be 1, where I find cars in general, 2, how I shoot them, and this part will be a value to, I think, even if you're not doing cars too, because it's a lot of techniques on how you do events in general. Since most of my car pictures are at car shows and how to avoid things and what things to look for when you're shooting to make it easier to fix later, because almost everything needs to be fixed. Anyway, and then, like I said, a whole bunch of stuff that's gonna include Topaz, Nick, DxO stuff, which is also Nick, on one, a whole bunch of things like that, a bunch of things that I do in Photoshop, mostly wrong, but it still worked. So anyway, and there's a lot of people here who have been to my house and been helped by me, Oz, Todd, a whole bunch of other people from the club have been at my house at one point or another. So anyway, that's what it is.
Very good. Well, we appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us and sharing the powerful system that you seem to have there.
Yeah. Like I said, you'll have to probably wear radioactive glasses, even if you're watching it from here. So.
Got it. Okay. Thanks for the warning. Appreciate that. So one additional thing that we're going to have in September, besides our standard program and competition meetings, I just talked to Doug Johnson, who gave a presentation on macro a couple months ago. And if you were at that meeting, you might remember that he said that he would happy to be involved in a critique session where people would send in images and he would go through and pull them up in Lightroom and do a quick critique on them. And well, we've got them for September 20th. So right in between the competition and between the program and competition meeting, that week, September 20th, 6:30 p.m., our standard time. Obviously, this will be Zoom only, mostly because he's in Montana. And, I don't think we'd be able to bump the schedule for Lone Tree to get the room on such short notice. So we'll just do it as Zoom only. I will be putting on information in the September newsletter and perhaps even before that. We'll use our same submission form. You'll just tag it as critique only. And we'll be able to submit 2 images per person. Hopefully we get a lot of people involved. We've done these critique kind of things amongst ourselves before that have been somewhat less than successful, but I kind of look at it as like a competition without scores. And something where you can learn from an experienced photographer, a guy who does a lot of teaching, and who does a lot of image reviews. This is actually one of the things that he offers as a service, which we are getting for nada. So it's a heck of a deal. But anyways, keep in mind that September 20th, we'll have a a professional critique, shall we say. Okay, so this
One other
evening,
date,
say again?
I have another date, we could put it in a newsletter, but I was just looking ahead. I'm gonna lead a tour of the Great Sandhill Crane Migration. That's next March 8th, 9th, and 10th. That's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Everybody's just gonna pay their own way. I'm not charging. I was there last year, so I feel like I know most of the ropes. One of our comrades, whose name shouldn't be mentioned, but rhymes with Jeff Johnson, leads a tour there every year, which is about $1,500, and he has real expertise. So I would encourage you, if you have $1,500, to take Jeff's tour. Otherwise, come along with the rest of us, and we'll get some different hotels and just make it fun. People can come from one night or 2 nights or 3 nights. And we'll shoot the 30,000 great sandhill cranes that come into Monte Vista every year for the last, I don't know, 1,000 years roughly. March 8th through the 10th, 2024.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Todd. Thank you very much for volunteering to lead that. And obviously, we will have more information as we get closer to that date. And
Yeah, we'll need to make hotel reservations. It's the biggest event in Monte Vista of the year,
Sure.
so they really jack up their rates and stuff, which is understandable, because it's the only thing they've got going there. But it's a great time, and it's a beautiful part of our state.
All right. Well, thank you. Okay, so this evening our competition is blue and golden hour. So we're going to see images of that quote magical light about an hour before or after sunrise or sunset. And our judge this evening is Greg Holden. Greg has presented for us before last year, did a program on abstracts, as I remember, and he has graciously volunteered to judge our competition this evening. If you let me get through a quick bio here, Greg, and then I'll turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, Greg is a photographer from Longmont who uses his photography to share with others how he sees the world. He enjoys creative photos of little scenes often overlooked by others, rather than postcard images and landscapes. Although he won't pass by a chance to photograph a beautiful landscape or a tranquil sunset, he'd rather be exploring abandoned places and capturing the details of the layers of paint and rust on a discarded automobile. Maybe you want to come join us for the dance presentation too, and you can see our pictures there. Greg enjoys searching used bookstores for photo collections and has over 170 books on and about photography. He finds inspiration from master photographers in a wide range of subjects, such as close-up beach studies by Minor White, the early portraiture of Steichen and Steiglitz, and street scenes by Andre Cortez. He enjoys teaching others and sharing his passion for photography and speaks and judges virtually to clubs across the U.S. See Greg's work on his website, imagesunderfoot.com. Greg, is there anything else that you would like to add to that, sir?
No, I think that was good. Yeah, I guess I'll just add, tonight's competition of sorts. There's judging, there's, scores of 6 to 10. But my hope is that it's more of a critique session, an educational opportunity for everyone. Hopefully I provide some good insights on what works well in a picture or how you could improve a picture either in further editing or next time out, a second attempt. So my goal is to be more educational than to just hand out a bunch of numbers by the end of the night. So, but we'll do both.
Exactly. Well, that's kind of what we shoot for in our competitions, to be educational besides having the scores. So this evening we have about 30 images, so I think it's going to be a little bit shorter meeting than normal. And I would ask that everybody on Zoom please mute so that we can make sure that we're hearing Greg solely. Fred will be showing the images this evening. He'll pop them up. I'll read the title, and then Greg will go ahead and get your comments and critique on the image and go through them.
Right.
So Fred, if you're ready, I'm ready too. Okay, this is just our calibration image since the main reason we pop this up is just so people on Zoom, because Zoom can, fluctuate with the saturation, the contrast, etc. So we just give people a little chance to take a look at this. And if you notice that this image is, excuse me, a little less saturated than normal, or the contrast doesn't quite look right, you know that your monitor may be off just a touch, and that any subsequent images that you see this evening will also look that way. So let's go ahead to our first image there. This is 1929 Ford Model A pickup.
All right, so yeah, this is really nice picture. I like the framing on it, the composition, the color really pops. I got some nice bit of color there in the background. So this is an image I would expect to see right in the calendar of hot rods. It's just such a nice car. There's a few little things I think that could be just tweaked to bring it even to an even further level. It looks like there maybe was some different lighting added or something like that. Like I'm seeing kind of a bright spot behind the car, behind the back wheel, but I'm not necessarily seeing that everywhere. So not sure exactly what was going on there. I think that's something maybe I just try to tone down a little bit because my eye gets curious of what's that bright spot back there under the back driver's side rear tire instead of just being all shadow. And then also that window coming out the back of the cab, that may be exactly what it looked like, showing the sky there. But to me, it's kind of a bright spot surrounded by darkness, that framing. My eye just keeps jumping to that little tiny window. I don't want to jump to that window. I want to stay looking out the exterior of this beautiful car and the front and the grille. So even though that may be exactly the way it looked in real life, that doesn't mean that's the way it needs to look in the final print or final image. So I would go in and just tone that down a little bit, just make it not as bright. Kind of if you look through the front window, front windshield, you kind of see the luminosity value of the sky through there. Just make it about the same so it just doesn't pop out. And it's mainly because that black framing around it from the darkness inside the cab. So, I mean, just little tweaks could just elevate this image even more. It's already really nice. Like I said, good composition, nice and sharp. Not quite sure I understand, not being a car aficionado myself, exactly what the background is. I'm guessing it's some type of raceway. So, but anyway, it's a nice image. And so I give this one a 9.
Denver Sunset.
Yeah, really nice pano here. This one's interesting because we'll talk about clouds in some other images. Denver, we got some wonderful mountains and of course the cityscape and everything, but we get these darn gray clouds all the time. They don't always work the best with sunset, but I think for this one, it worked out really well. We have the bright sun there on the right, and it is blown out. Your highlights are probably clipped there. But that's okay. I think for this image, you don't want to do HDR or something weird to make it look artificial. So it's okay. I think the photographer did a good job controlling the exposure to the right exposure there. And I love the glow, of course, that light is casting on the rest of the scene. Get a little bit of rim light on the Denver skyline there on the left. And it's kind of highlighting the haze there in the foreground. And we have some dark clouds in here, but they're not. They're thin and they're balanced out well by the orange glow of the setting sun and the blue sky there above it. So I think done a good job balancing. We'll see some photos later where the balance is not as well done there. And this works really well as a pano to really show kind of the city and then this kind of vacant space and a couple of little buildings. And then you got the bright sun there on the right side to balance out the image because we have a lot going on the left side with the Denver skyline, and then the sun there balanced out on the right. So that's like a teeter-totter. So the image is balanced. So I really like this one. I wish the clouds were a little less gray. I'm not sure you can't fix nature there, and you can try to lighten them up, but then it would look kind of artificial. So But overall, I thought this is really good. So I give this one a 9 as well.
End of day.
So yeah, here's another one with a bright setting sun. Uh, and this one, little bright spot there in the middle, but then this wonderful glow around it. I thought the photographer did a really good job kind of timing the photo here, that sun is just starting to set below those buildings there, but it's a little bit of peeking out to give a little bright spot, but still plenty of great color in the sky. And it's creating, much like the buildings rim light we saw in the previous picture, see even more of that with these boats, just a little bit of that golden light wrapping around the boats. And that's really nice, really defines those. Even though the boats are in shadow, there's enough detail there to see what's going on. And then with the little rim light, looks really beautiful. The couple things I have for this one, I'm not exactly sure about the cropping. It looks like we've gone to a square crop, which probably a good idea for this one. But I question the photographer's inclusion of that piling on the right with the little pointy top. I recognize it kind of balances out the pilings we see on the far left. But to me, it's like there's a dead space. We have a lot of good stuff going on here. The left 2/3 of the picture with the boats and the lighting on them. And then we got kind of a bare spot of water, which is okay to have a little negative space. But then this one item over there, my eye just wants to kind of, it's very sharp and it's very distinct, graphical element, that sharp line with the point on top. So my eye wants to keep pulling myself over to that element to say, hey, what's over there? The photographer chose to include that piling, so there must be something interesting to see over there. And my eye wants to pull over there. I don't want to go over there. I want to stay where the action is, here on the left 2/3 of the image. So I crop down a little bit on this. I think you can probably keep the square crop and just crop in a little bit, take just a little sliver off the right there. You'd end up taking a little sliver off the top, but I think it'll balance it out a little better. So I give this one an 8. Good attempt, but I think you could tweak it even further to elevate it.
Lionizing Dad.
This one was really nice, but I was also a little scared because I was wondering how you got into my bedroom in the first thing in the morning, because this is me in the morning with my cat coming in at some ungodly hour to wake me up and say, come on, time to feed me, play with me. And you can see the stoic look on the male lying there on the right saying, what are you doing? Get away from me, little kitten. So that's what I kind of thought about. And it's that's my personal connection, but it's a really great thing, I think, when people capture. There's so many wildlife photographers out there, right? All the animals have all been photographed. Let's just say that. So I think it's great when you capture not only a good moment, we got great lighting, coming in there, especially highlighting the cub and their rich colored fur there. But then to create like a moment that you can, extrapolate into human emotions, like I said, this, annoying kid waking me up in the morning. So I think that allows the viewer to really connect more with the photo. Whenever you have a living subject, whether it be a person or in this case an animal, I think being able to create a story or create a personal connection just really elevates your photo to a whole nother level. It's not just a great wildlife photo. This is probably, it could have been nature, could have been a zoo, who knows? But my only little nit, and it's just a nit, it seems like it's a little tight crop on the top. I wish Simba there on the right, or Mustafa, I guess it would be Mustafa from Lion King. I wish I saw just a little bit more of his forehead. You didn't necessarily need to see the whole thing and see his ear and stuff like that, but just it feels a little bit tight on the eye there. So if you have more space in your original negative, I would just zoom out just a little bit, just so it doesn't feel so tight up on his eye there. But otherwise, I really, really like this image. A lot of good stuff going on. Good job with your depth of field, getting that background blurry. Like I said, I don't know if this is a zoo or if you're on safari. Could be either or, because I can't tell. And that's all. That's great. So I gave this one a 10. This one's really nice.
Barren Beauty.
Yeah, this is really another one with really great, this orange glow here on these rocks. And good choice of putting a person in the scene, right there on that little precipice. I think that balances out the scene. And then of course he's got an orange jacket on. I don't know if that just is happenstance or you planned it that way. That balances well with the orange colors on the right. The two things I have on this one is I don't understand why the guy is looking out into the non-pretty part of the picture. And I recognize when you see these kinds of photos, this is typically how it's done. You put a person in, you get them staring out into the vastness of the photo, and then it's, you can think of all these metaphorical things related to that, and that's all good. But in this case, with the composition, all the action, all the great stuff is on the left, like 70% of the photo, that wonderful raking light of the setting sun or rising sun, maybe it is, creating this wonderful orange glow. Like, why is the guy looking out into the desert where there's nothing going on? So I'm a little confused. Why is he turned looking that way? Like, I'd rather see him in profile, turned sideways, enjoying the wonderful color there. So as a viewer, I see all this great stuff on the right side of the image, wonderful light, your depth of field is phenomenal, great sharpness throughout the image, well composed. But my mind keeps saying, what is the guy looking at? Well, why is he looking at these beautiful glowing rocks behind him? Why is he looking off to the side? Am I missing something? And then so my eye wants to keep looking over there, like, is there something else going on? And so you're drawing my attention, I think, in the wrong direction. And then also we have this wonderful arch from the big rocks there on the right. They're glowing fiery red, kind of arching down to where the person is, but it's broken up by this one boulder that's here and just off of center on the right. And it's nature, right? That's the way it is. I don't know if the photographer would have been able to take a step or two forward or hold his camera up higher and angle down a little bit to maybe make a little bit more of a continuous line there. So I can see a little bit more of that glow on that entire arc coming from far right all the way out to the man. I think that would just been, icing on the cake, just make it even better. So I'm kind of displeased with that interrupt there. So a lot of good things going on here, but I think there's just a few things off on it. So I'm going to give this one an 8. Technically excellent, but some composition challenges.
Green Lake Reflections.
So this is a great, tried and true compositional choice to when you're in a situation like that. Everyone takes pictures of the actual mountain or whatnot. Well, why not take a picture of the reflection? And in this case, just the reflection. I mean, there's a little bit of a sliver of the real thing up top, but it's just a reflection. And that's really fun. I think that's fun to do. And especially when you are, with exposure differences like this, it's impossible to get the reflection really nice and the actual mountain really nice all in one exposure. The depth, the exposure range is just too broad, and you usually have to do HDR, and that adds extra complications if you're not an expert in that kind of technique. So just isolating one part of the picture is a good way to help with your exposure level. But in this case, the reflection's a little soft. I wish it had been focused in on more, and what it looks like is the photographer focused on the stuff in the background, because that looks relatively sharp. But that means that's where my depth of field is set. My depth of field is set at that infinity instead of at more midpoint where the reflection is. So I think when your focus is the reflection, and then that stuff in the background, the real stuff, is just a supporting element. Put your focus point right there, about 1/3 up the frame onto the reflection. So that's the sharpest part of your image. But good composition. I like the colors here. I like that you did include just a little sliver of the real stuff, the trees and stuff in the background. But I just wish that reflection was a little sharper so that we could just appreciate it and kind of be confused, like, why is everything upside down? And then we realize, it's a reflection going on there. So good attempt on this one. But so I don't know, I gave this one like a 7.5, so I know that's not a real rating. So we'll give it an 8, but it's a 8.0, I guess, just in there by the skin of its chin.
Palouse country.
So here is, this is just a real premier example of how to do a landscape. This is really, really good. Palouse is a well photographed place. People go on field trips that, camera club trips there, workshops there. But I've seen lots of images from Palouse, but I don't know I've seen one exactly like this with this kind of wider, deeper composition. So really good credit to the photographer coming up with something, a little bit different than what a lot of people do. A lot of people just focus on one piece of this kind of landscape and not show as much depth as this. So I really like that photographer is really thinking kind of big picture. We got wonderful light coming in here from the side, casting that wonderful glow on those foreground hills. And if you chopped off that top third of the image, that's a great image all by itself. But I like that you included that background, that part that's not as lit up, just as a counterbalance to that wonderful light we have here to show that more vastness of the scene and more the rolling hills continues. But it's at a different tonal value because it's not getting that sunlight coming in. But it allows us to see some buildings and some structures back there. It looks like a grain tower. So it just adds other elements, other supporting elements. And so I think this is a really good lesson for especially newer photographers to take away, that just like a good movie, you have the star of the movie, the rock star, and there's times when you want them taking up the whole picture, the whole scene, and it's nothing but the action hero or whatever. But a movie is not just about one person. It's got all these supporting characters, supporting actors, and scenery. And so you often do these wider shots. And so here's an example. We got this wonderful light, this wonderful, starring actor here, but the photographer included these other elements to really just round out the image and show you the vastness of beauty of this, part of the country here in Upper Washington. So definitely gave this one a 10. This is really, really nice.
Devil's Hour.
So this one, I like the composition. I like this leading line of this path here coming in. And we got a lot of different elements going on here with the picture. There's some fog there and interesting light behind the tower. But if you study it a little closer, to me, it looks very artificial. And I debated, I studied this one for a little bit, trying to figure out, is it just the way it was processed? Is very heavy-handed with some of the software tools, or is there some compositing going on here? Because there's just a lot of pieces that, to me, it doesn't fit too well, and it starts to look. It's one thing to go heavy-handed sometimes with processing to really create that artful impact, and I think sometimes it works. In this case, to me, it just looked too manufactured, I guess, and so if we kind of take this image and kind of look closely at it, if we look at the fog, the bottom of the Devil's Tower there's like a sharp edge there. If you look straight down the center of the tower and right off to the right, the fog, there's like a sharp edge in the white there. And I zoomed in on my computer when I saw this in the previews. It looks like it's a solar flare spot. So when your camera is pointing towards a bright sun, you'll get flare spots in your lens. And so it looks like that's what it is. But how can that be if the sun is setted so far below? We wouldn't have bright light to create that kind of effect. So it just kind of that sharp edge. It seems small, but I guess, I don't know, my trained eye jumped right out at me. And then we have this lighting on the grass here that just doesn't seem to balance with the light on the rest of the scene, like it's been just over processed too much. And so, if the sun is this low, we got all these dark clouds on the top half, and the light appears to be pretty low there, we wouldn't have a lot of light on these grasses. They would be starting to be in shadow. So I don't understand why they're so bright. And it just seems like that's just the way the image was processed. So This one to me, I guess, is what I would call what some people call overcooked. It just you kind of gone a little too heavy-handed for my taste with the HDR. And for some people, this might work. But to me, I think you maybe take it a little bit too far and just I don't know. It's hard for me to envision myself there because it doesn't seem real. So I gave this one a 7. I know other judges may say something different, but too overdone for me. Sorry.
Cradled Moon.
Interesting choice of composition here. I like this moon here. I was trying to debate whether it was an eclipse, so that was just how we were seeing the moon. And it looks like a planet or something to the right there. So that to me, was kind of interesting. The rock formation, I love rocks. So the rock formations were interesting to me, but they're very heavy, right? We have these dark masses. We can see some shadow detail in there. We can see the texture and stuff like that, but there's a lot of them, right? A lot of this image, almost, I'd say 65% or whatever, is this dark mass, the rocks. Had the rocks been just a little bit more light on them and maybe you can appreciate them more, that would be acceptable. But in this case, with this blue hour, it's just a really heavy mass. And I don't think you needed as much rock as you chose to include here. The blue sky looks really pretty. The astral elements with the moon and the planet there are a nice little add and kind of shows you a nice kind of scale comparison, how small they are compared to the rocks, at least from this perspective. But I would have cropped off the bottom, 10% at least of this, right where that mountain kind of gets textured and has kind of ridge to it. Just crop that out. If you had a little bit more of the blue sky, I'd include a little bit more of that just because this mountain here on the right, it's getting really close to the top. And I know you don't like to normally include just blue sky because it's kind of bland, right? There's no clouds or something interesting there. But I think sometimes you need to give your picture a little more breathing room. So it feels like kind of like when I was talking about the lion before, how he's kind of tight on the top. I wish there was a little bit more blue on the top. Not a lot, but just I think a little bit more. So I think your composition is off. And I guess it's hard for me to kind of gravitate towards this one just because it is kind of dark and heavy and I can't really appreciate the rocks as kind of a starring role that you're kind of giving them with the real estate you've given them. Because they are just in shadow because it's dark and it's the blue hour. So I gave this one a 7.
Capitol Hills.
All right. So you have really nice color on this one. Much like some of the other sunset photos we've seen before. We're getting again this nice kind of rim light, especially on that dome there in the center of the picture. A lot of times you'll hear you don't put your subject in the center of the image, and sort of what the photographer has done here with that main element there right in the center. But I think it works all right for this composition because it's balanced by that real Gothic church on the left. And then we have some buildings and stuff on the right. I wish there was a little something in that negative space on the right, like some birds flying through or something like that to really balance it out. So I see 1, 2, 3 instead of 1, 2 blank. But as it is, it's fine. The hillsides and stuff look great in the background. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the sky. I have a hard time believing that the sky looked yellow like that. It almost looks like it was just cloned in, just a yellow sky to kind of go with the color theme. So that part looks a little artificial to me. And maybe that's just the way it was processed. But I like your composition. I like including the bits of trees there in the bottom. Kind of nice balance, kind of counterpoint to all the architectural elements there in the center of the frame. And I like that little haze in the background. So overall, it's fine. It's to me also the image a little bit grainy. I don't know what it was an ISO thing or if you cropped in a bit. So we're losing some sharpness and we're seeing a bit of grain. You can especially see that in the hillsides in the back. So I think there's some good elements here, but I gave this one a 7.
California Sunset.
So this is an interesting one, and before I saw the title, I said, "Oh, this must be from one of your camera club outings." But I don't know if you take camera club field trips all the way to California. So here, kind of like the picture we've seen before with the lone gentleman looking out into the distance. I said I don't know what he's looking at. Here it's very obvious. We're all they're all looking to the right. The right is very bright. It's over the ocean, so I can tell we're watching some sort of sunset on the west coast. Be sunrise on the east coast, but based on the rocks and stuff, that looks very west coast in the title, California. I like how you compose this to keep the photographers and people all kind of separate from each other, so we can appreciate each one. But to me, I think there's some good elements with some of the composition here, but it is pretty bright there on the right side, and so an image like this, I can forgive, I guess, an overexposure on the sunset on the right side of the image, if that was done to provide enough shadow detail on everything on the left. And we're seeing some shadow detail in the people. We can kind of make out their clothing and who they are, what they're doing, but there's really not that much. So it just seems like the exposure, I've sacrificed the beautiful sunset, and I'm not really getting any bang for my buck. Like, I'd rather have the exposure be spot on for the sunset, and then all these people be in pure silhouette, like they're just black shapes. We'll be able to tell they're people. We don't need to be able to see the color of their jeans. If they were just black, all pure black in silhouette, I think that would be much more effective, and then we'd really get to appreciate the pretty thing that they're looking at. So to me, this is a nice grab shot. It got some nice elements in it, but for a competition photo, I think it needed to be something a little bit different. So I gave this one a 7.
Feeling sort of blue.
Yes, and you guys are doing really well with these crescent moons, but still be able to see the rest of the moon. So really interesting here. I like how we've seen some stars in the upper left corners that kind of balances out the sky there. And then we got the wonderful colors there on the horizon. We're blowing out a little bit on the white there. But again, for a single exposure, that's going to happen. And I think it's okay. And actually, in this case, it's balanced out well by the long exposure here in the foreground with the white on the wet sand there. That kind of balances out that white layer on the horizon line. And I like how you have some rock elements here in the foreground to kind of add a little bit more interest, especially there on the left side of the image, because we don't have a lot going on in the upper left part of the image in the sky, except for a few stars. So I think having a few rocks over there was a good choice. If that had just been all water, I think it would feel a little off balance. So I think that was a really good choice by the photographer to compose it that way, to include this little element. So we got a lot of different layers here. We got the dark sand and shadow, and then the wet sand, the water, then the horizon, then we got the wonderful sky with a bit of stars sprinkled throughout. So really, it's a nice kind of parfait of an image with all these different layers. So really nice overall. This one like an 8.5, so I'm on kind of fence. We'll give this one a 9, because I think technically, no, not perfect, but it's very pleasing to look at. And I think that gives you the extra half point. So I'll give you the 9 on this.
I see sunset.
This is really nice. If you look at my portfolio, you see I've done a lot of stuff like this. And, I love these kind of abstract things where, this could be a body of water anywhere in the world. And it doesn't matter. I don't need the context of where it is. I don't need to know what was in the distance or off to the sides. It's just about the motion here. We got these wonderful undulating, waters, the long exposure. You got a really good job on your exposure as far as the length of it to get kind of that waviness in the water. And then, of course, we got the splash of color throughout, balances out with the blues and the darks and the kind of waviness. I'm not sure what this little debris is all over the water, but it's pretty consistent. Wish it wasn't there. Wish that was all purely smooth and silky. But that's again nature. That's how it is. You don't get to control that. But at least it is consistent throughout the image. So it's, in this case, adding kind of little splashes of texture throughout the image. So I thought this was really well done. And I like how we have some heavy stuff here in the foreground with these darker waves. And if the whole image had been that, it might feel too dense, but it kind of opens up towards the top of the image, and it's much brighter. We have one little dark wave there, But I think this worked out well with this composition. I think to me, it feels very balanced. We get the nice kind of diagonal cutting through where the light is, but then the waves keep my eyes kind of going side to side, up and down the image. So really, really well done on this one. So really good study in long exposure and abstracts. So I give this one a 10. That's nice.
Hot air balloon burner.
All right, so this kind of interesting take on this. We've all probably seen lots of shots of hot air balloons. So this one with just the basket and the burner, something different. I haven't seen a lot of photos like this without a big balloon on the side. I like the photographer's choice of keeping everyone in the foreground in kind of in shade and silhouette. We can kind of make out there's some people. We got a little rim light on some of them with their hair from the setting sun. So that's nice. It's maybe a tad dark. I might have lightened up those shadows just a hint, just to make it not so heavy and so dark. But overall nice, and you did a good job with your exposure, catching that flame on the left burner there. So overall, interesting photo. Like I said, it definitely points to her creativity. But to me, I think it ends there. I don't think it has enough to really take it to a higher level for me for scoring. So I gave this one an 8.
Alpine glow. And just to interject, this is about halfway through.
Okay.
So after this image, we'll pause and go through and talk to the makers of the people who've gotten 9s and 10s,
Okay.
get their input on the image, and then we'll proceed with the rest. So.
Okay, sounds good. So interesting title choice on this one, Alpine Glow. I guess when I think Alpine, I want to see some Alpine trees in good color too. And here we're seeing just a lot of evergreens. But to me, it's just a setting sun on these clouds, which could be pretty much anywhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Alpine layer. But anyway, this is why I often caution people to put titles on things, because I might not resonate with your particular title. And that can sway the judge one way or the other. But anyway, so back to the image. So really nice light on this cloud here. Really good job with your exposure, capturing all that detail, all those kinds of layers in the clouds there. We got a lot of different elements going on. We got the cloud, obviously, kind of star of the show. Then there's a little house that's kind of balanced by this clump of trees, and then the fields and the mountains. So a lot of nice different elements here. But to me, I think it still feels kind of off balance. Almost everything is in the left 2/3 of the image, right? The clump of trees, most of the mountain, half the mountain range, all the clouds, the building. So I question, why do we need that right third of the image? I see the mountains, I see the trees. I know it's a vast landscape. I don't need a wide frame to tell me that. So if all of your actions on that left part of the image, and there's some clouds up there, some little white wispy clouds there on the upper right. But I think those aren't as interesting to me as the rest of the other elements. So I'd almost crop this in, maybe not a square, but maybe a 4x5 or something like that. So I can crop off some of that right part of the image, because I think it's just extraneous. I don't think it's needed. I might take a little bit off the trees at the bottom. I don't think you need that one lighter grassy area. You probably lob just right off at that point. And you still have all the elements that you're looking at with the greenery and the house and trees and stuff. So I think you can come in a little tighter on this one. I give this one an 8. And I guess we'll take a pause.
Okay, so the first of our 9s and 10s here. This is the Ford Model A pickup from Dan Greenberg.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. No, that's a picture I took about 10 years ago at a car show. It's at Pimlico Racetrack, where they have the Preakness, part of the Triple Crown. The car itself, it is an HDR image. So there's it's a 3 exposure HDR. Back in those days, I was always using stuff like that because of the fact to get the detail out of the headlights and get detail out of the sky. You kind of need to do that. At the same time, if you shoot this as a single exposure, it's pretty close to impossible to try using a bunch of neutral density filters and, erasing things and whatever. The glow in the back is because of the taillights. That's something actually, it's always bothered me too, and I think I'm gonna revisit it and fix that. Because of the fact, I totally looked at it all the time like that too, but at any rate, it was a posed picture, it's been in a magazine, the owner bought it, it's been in a calendar, a couple other things like that, and I was desperate to try to find pictures taken at the right time, so. Thank you.
All right, good. Well, good. I'm glad it's been a successful image for you.
Thank you, Dan.
Once in a while.
And Denver Sunset is from Matthew Hazelgren. I don't see him on Zoom. Is Matthew in the room?
Nope.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, he didn't leave any notes about the image. So all we know is it's a nice panel of a Denver sunset. Lionizing Dad, this is from David Besson.
Thank you, Greg, for your comments. Yeah, this was actually taken in Botswana last May, and it was about 30 minutes before sunset. I wish I'd been further away from the subjects, because this is the full frame. And I too was a little frustrated that I didn't have a little more forehead of the male adult or adult male, or maybe even an ear. But I didn't have the cubs were wandering off, and I didn't have time to change lenses.
What lens?
This was a 100/400. I backed it all the way out to 100.
Wow.
Yeah, but we were about 10 feet away.
Wow.
But
Yeah, I've gotten in carrying 2 camera bodies with 2 different focal lengths with big trips.
Right.
I hate it. I hate the extra weight. I hate the extra hassle. But man, it's nice when I see a scene wide and I have my wides ready, and then I see a zoom in and I have my zoom ready. But it's a pain. So I feel your pain. I've been there where you try to live with one lens, and then this one great photo doesn't quite fit the lens you have. But you made the best of it. So still a great image.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments.
Yeah, well, David's got about 25,000 other images from that trip. So he didn't really lose too much. Palouse Country, this is from Oz Fenninger.
Yeah, we visited the area probably May, maybe it was April. And we drove up to Steptoe Butte, which is a great viewpoint over this area. And there were tons of people up there with tripods and cameras. And I thought it was a camera club. It wasn't, it's just a nice place to take pictures. So at the bottom right, there was a dirt area that was rather distracting. So the content of where I changed that. Otherwise, I didn't do a whole lot. On the upper left corner, I darkened that a little bit. And it's taken with a kind of an intermediate zoom. But the shadows and the low light was, or the low sun angle was perfect. And thanks for your comments.
Yeah, beautiful.
Feeling sort of blue, this is Terry Hanford.
This is a picture of the Oregon coast. I was just coming back from shooting in a different location. And if you've driven along the Oregon coast, the road takes you right along the coast, lots of places. And so I saw this sunset and the moon coming up, and I just jumped out and took a long exposure on it. I did work a bit on the colors. There was quite a bit of haze in the background, which is that cloudy area. It looked sort of whitish. Also, I actually went through and brightened each of those stars up in the left because they were so tiny in the thing and they still are pretty diminutive. But I thought it was important to see them up there to balance out that corner. So thank you for your comments on this.
Yeah, great. Yeah, no, that was a good choice to do that.
And this is Icy Sunset from Brian Olmsted.
Hi, thanks for the comments. This was up at Grand Marais on Lake Superior in Minnesota, Grand Marais, Minnesota. Like 10 years ago, I was just taking pictures of the sunsets, and I think there in other pictures I saw something swimming out there, so I think I was chasing an otter. I think I was trying to get a picture of an otter, and of course, not able to get it at all. But I did no editing on this other than cropping it down and trying to find that right. Kind of like you mentioned that it's nice and blue at the bottom, but in the original image, there's some really bright waves at the bottom. So that was my thought as well, was kind of make it dark blue at the bottom and just work its way up. So yeah, this is straight off the camera, just cropped. But thank you for the comments.
Nice. Well, you have to go thank nature.
Yeah, that's a great image, Brian. That's very nice. Okay, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, nice composition on this one. Like that, we got that boardwalk on the right, and then and we got a little bit of light on the wet boards there. And that's balanced well with the lights on the pillars there on the left for each of the tables. So yeah, really nice composition, and I think the blue color in the sky complements well with these purple magenta shades we're having there. I think we could probably shave a little bit off the right. I don't think I need all that stuff that's in shadow there. Usually don't like things going directly to your corner, so that edge of that boardwalk really goes right exactly to that corner. So I think you could cut that in just a little bit, and you wouldn't lose much. I think it just might balance the image out a little bit differently. You might consider, and this I think is just more of a preference. I think it's fine how it is, but you might consider, again, like a 4x5 crop to take off this the leftmost umbrella, because there's quite a gap between that and then the subsequent umbrellas that have a little bit more of an equal spacing to them. It's just because of your perspective, how that is. So I don't necessarily think we need that wide of a gap there. And then also we have some issues where the lights come to a very tiny tightrope. And so it's almost like they're kind of floating. They kind of just end, but there's a very tiny line there. So I think if we cropped in a little bit on the right, those lights would kind of come just right to the edge of the frame, and I think that might balance it out a little bit better. But as it stands, decent image. I guess 1 and 8.
Cathedral Rock.
Yeah, I like the color on this rock. I think you've gotten really good exposure. We've seen this with some other photos already. When you get sunset on these types of rocks, a lot of times the reds can really get kind of blown out. And when you hear the term blowout, you usually think of whites, and that is true, but you can blow out color channels too. So I think we might be seeing a little bit of that on this, with the reds being maybe a little too oversaturated. I like the top part of the image, and I can kind of understand why the photographer thought to include the bottom part with the rocks there and the water. We get some reflection, but it's really in shadow. And this is kind of what we're talking about with the other image that was just the reflection. You're not going to get it all in one shot, one exposure. You'd have to do HDR to balance it out, or just significant editing on your photo. So to me, I think the bottom quarter of the image, it's just too dark for you to really appreciate the reflection of the color in the water. And the rocks, I can't really appreciate them because they're in heavy shadow. So I think it's one of these things, like if you want to include that stuff, don't diminish it, emphasize it. You brighten it up a little bit, not as bright as the top. You want the top to still be the star of the show, but you brighten up a little bit so I can appreciate that. And so it's not just kind of in real shadow there. Otherwise, do you really need that? If that's too much work or too much effort to make that look nice and balanced, you could crop that out. And I think the top 2/3 of your image is still a really great image as it is. Good composition with the rocks there and the little kind of trees framing them out. So I think you need to do some work with the water there or crop it out. So I gave this one 8.
Closed for the night.
Really great night scene here, with these long exposures. It's good. The long exposure gets all that detail in the window shops there at the bottom, but you got to be really careful not totally blow out the string of lights. And so the photographer did a really good job with just the right exposure balance here. I wish that the storefronts, it looks like there's maybe a door closed down on them on the right. Then there is a few windows and a door. I wish those were just lighten up the shadows a little bit there, just to balance it out. I know there's not much there to see. All the action's really on the left side of the frame, but I think it just needs to be a little brighter so it's not a black hole that my eye wants to kind of go and sink into. So I'd brighten that up, maybe not so much the big black doors there, but maybe the door frame that's right past it, right on the right side of the screen, just to balance out. Because if you look on the left side of the screen, those stores, those lights are still on, they're still really bright. So I think just to balance out a little bit more. But overall, really nice, night scene. Interesting looking corner of building here. So I give this one a 9.
Golden hour orb.
Yeah, so I wasn't exactly sure this one. It's hard to tell golden hour on this one, just from the kind of composition, but really nice on this one. I like how you position the spider. Kind of use the good old tried and true rule of thirds. Spider there is kind of on the PowerPoint of the intersection of those upper and right third lines, and then good job with your shallow depth of field, creating the nice bokeh or bokeh in the background from all the probably other little dewdrops or whatever is going on back there. So it's framed out really nice, got a nice sharpness to it, and then the light, that backlighting really kind of framing out the spider. So this was really nice. I gave this one a 9. I'm not sure why it wasn't quite a 10. I don't know, but 9.
Stillness at the waterhole.
So this one kind of reminded me of the photo we saw earlier with the setting sun and the blue, a lot of the blues, but obviously a totally different picture. But very interesting. It's so much like the other one. It's just pleasing to look at. These bright colors. Blue is maybe not the cheery color per se, but it's a good blue. It's very pleasing to look at. That little bit of yellow there, and then we got this interesting kind of marsh going on here in the front. Almost otherworldly, but I guess it's just a pond or whatever that's low on water. But it adds a nice kind of interest there into the foreground. So this one's really nice. I think I wish there's maybe a little bit something more to it. So I gave this one an 8. I think it's good, but
Place of rest.
so I've seen a lot of photos of abandoned cars. I think this is my first seeing abandoned Jeep or military vehicle out in the prairie. You're used to seeing an old Oldsmobile or something like that, or pickup truck, not an army truck. So that kind of caught me a little off guard. I wasn't quite sure what to make of that. But really good job with your depth of field here. We can see kind of sharpness in these wildflowers in the front, and then going all the way back to the Jeep, and then even still seeing to the distance, the little bit of clouds there, and the light. So this was, it's really nice. I wish some of those orange colors, we see a few more pops of them in other parts of the scene, but again, nature, that's how it is. That isn't always uniform. But I like it. Overall, it's really nice. It just, I think the military truck's kind of throwing me off. I'm used to seeing more curvy, rusty, classic car, not military vehicles. So I think for that, I gave it a 9.
Morning at Bridge Mountain.
This was nice. I like the balance here. We talked about this on some other photos. So we have the bright orange there on the mountains, but I still have enough shadow detail on the rocks in the foreground that I can appreciate what's there. They're not in total shadow, but they're not too bright to compete with the wonderful light cast on the rocks above. And then, of course, this one little tree. I like that you've done a good job and keep that tree, your low vantage point makes that tree just right against the orange. So it stands out. You can appreciate this craggly tree. And then if you kind of, I don't know how intentional this was, but the tree kind of curves a little bit to the right and kind of follows this rock line also on the right, where there's kind of a diagonal striation, I guess it is, in the rock. And so that's kind of nice. It kind of follows that. So I don't know how intentional that was, but that's something I noticed. So this one's nice, kind of pleasing to look at. I gave this one a 9.
Sand dune magic.
So much like the water one we saw and talked about earlier, same kind of thing here. This is another really great example of just a study in texture, in light and shape and form. It's an abstract. I do a lot of this kind of stuff. And this one's really interesting in that we got a lot of different things going on. And some people may see this as chaotic, but I find it as interesting where we have kind of wavy sands here on the right, and then they kind of on the upper left, but then they got this weird kind of diagonal jagged like bolts coming in here in the center, and it's just however the wind blew. And then just the light on this is really, really interesting. This one might make it also compelling black and white too. But I like the little pops of kind of golden rim lights on this one. So this is really nice. Good composer. We have the kind of main element there in the center with those diagonal lines, but then it's framed out nicely, but all these ripples and stuff around it. So just really good on this one. I give this one a 10.
Where there's fire, there's smoke.
So this is an image I talked about, was referring to earlier when we were talking about gray clouds. So this one, the sky is really, really cool. And I don't know how much you enhance that. I know sometimes skies can look this vibrant. But to me, the downside of this image is that band of gray clouds in the middle. And that's probably exactly how it was, just this low-lying set of clouds. And sometimes clouds are what allows us to really appreciate some of these colors because of light reflecting off of them. But it also means we often end up with these big swaths of gray. And so in the panoramic we saw of the Denver skyline before, like I said, they're kind of scattered a little bit more. We had a little bit more balance. This one, I got this big swath of gray. So that really, to me, kind of brings down the image because the rest of the image is really pretty. The other thing with this one is that sun, setting sun there in the middle is just way too perfect. Now, maybe the maker will tell me that's exactly what it was, but I just, with that large swath of gray cloud there, I just can't imagine I would see that perfect circle, that perfect sharp edge on that sun. I would think it'd be a little bit more diffused, a little fuzzy, just because of all the clouds there. So to me, it seems a little more artificial. And even the colors of it, the red hues in it don't seem to match the red hues I'm seeing in the rest of the image. So all the more reason to me, it seems like it's been too manipulated or photoshopped in or something. So it just irks me that it feels not natural. So I gave this one a 7.
Sea ice.
This was really nice. I like the photographer's choice to use that small aperture to get that sunburst there in the upper right. We got those really strong lines. And so, yeah, this one, there's not a point of focus. There's not a penguin out there. I'm guessing it's the Antarctica or something like that. There's not, some sea monster or something that I can focus on, but it's just this repetition of this texture of this ice chunks out in the water and just showing the vastness of this sea of ice. So really interesting there. I think your composition choice is good with this, 2/3 sea ice and 1/3 sky. So we can appreciate that big sunburst there. So yeah, nice image. You probably could bring up your looks made to me a little bit flat. Maybe you could increase your contrast or your whites a little bit on the ice to make them pop just a little bit more. Overall, this one was pretty good. I give this one an 8.
Prey, bird of prey.
Yeah, I hadn't caught that title before. Interesting on this one. We, good job with the photographer keeping just a little bit of that sun in the upper right, so we can see the bright splosh there, but mostly cropping it out because otherwise it would totally dominate the picture. But what's interesting on some of the other photos where we've seen with these kind of setting suns, I've talked a lot about rim light, kind of framing out your subject. And so I'm surprised I'm not seeing a bit more rim light on this hawk here. And maybe there's something else to the right of the image that was kind of shadowing him. And we can see the light through his beak, open beak. And I like his beak is open there, so we can see that glow behind him. But I'm just surprised there's not more color on the edge of his feathers. And to me, I think that would make it a lot stronger image, because otherwise he's he's pretty flat, right? That bottom third of the image is pretty flat. We're not seeing really the glow on any of the elements down there. So it's flat. And so if I'm going to have to deal with this bright high exposure spot in the upper right, it's a sacrifice I'll make if I get good rim light through the rest of the image, but I'm not getting good rim light. So it's like, why am I dealing with that overexposure in the upper right if I'm not going to reap the benefits of it? So I give this one a 7.
Mediterranean blue, Colorado.
So yeah, interesting choice. Doing this in a snowstorm. At first I was like, what is all this stuff in the sky on the right? And then I realized it was snowing. Interesting that there's this one light on in the building there in the lower left. Wish you could have knocked on the door and told someone, turn on one of the lights in the on the second floor, because I think that would be better placement of it. But I'm guessing you didn't have opportunity to go tell someone to put a custom lighting for you. The composition is pretty good with these kind of trees kind of playing off with the architecture and the sky. Again, we get one of these big dark gray clouds here in the upper left. I don't think you need all that cloud. I think you have wonderful light on the building. We got a little bit of orange there in the sky, which is pretty impressive for in the middle of a snowstorm. So I'd almost crop off the top, whatever, 10, 15% of this image, maybe right to the top of that upper orange cloud, because I don't think you need that much sky when all your action's down there at the bottom. So I gave this one an 8.
Fireball Ride, Boulder County Fair.
This one, I studied this for a lot, and the clouds in the background are really interesting. It's, I don't know if I call it golden hour. It just seems like a storm came in and covered the sun. But I guess I would expect to see a little bit more light on the coaster, or the people in the coaster cars. And I'm surprised they're in silhouette. I guess I was expecting, again, we're talking rim light. We keep bringing that term up for this competition, but I expect to see a little bit more glow on them, and surprised they're in so much shadow. But man, it's just the way the ride is. But because of the way they are, that's very dark. And so I'd almost want to go in and bring up the shadow detail a little bit. Not too much that's artificial, looks, over processed, but they're dark masses, and I can't even quite make out what they are. I'm assuming since a roller coaster, there's some type of people in the little chest harnesses or something like that. But I think we need a little bit more detail there. I love your composition though, with this burst of bright colors coming out of the clouds. I think you framed it up well with the arch here. I think this one maybe needs just a little bit more processing just to balance everything out. So gave this one an 8.
Ballooning at sunrise.
I like this wide shot that the photographer chose here. And so here's another case where we're seeing some dark, cloudy areas, but I think this one, the photographer's done a good job with balancing out with the bright light coming in on the right. And then we got some bright clouds kind of in the upper left. So to me, even though, yes, it's cloudy and there's some kind of big, kind of grayish, bluish clouds there, there's a bit more of a balance to it. So I think that looks really nice there. I like this environmental photo where you can see this balloons kind of out in this big field here, this big prairie area. I just wish that you would have waited for that balloon to take off and be up in this dead area, because the right side image, obviously with the light coming in, illuminates those clouds, and then we're not seeing anything on the left. So I almost wish you just waited for that balloon to peak up and kind of fill that space, and it would balance out lovely with the bright spot on the right. But as it is with it, just glowing, just getting ready to launch, I would not have included as much cloud. I would have gone a much smaller, skinnier pano, because I don't think you need that much cloud in the upper left if I'm not going to have a pretty balloon in the middle of it, or at least ascending into it instead of still being on the ground there. So I think good ideas here, but maybe not the decisive moment, as Henry would say. So I gave this one an 8.
And our final image for the evening, Fajada Butte.
Really like this one. We've seen a lot of examples tonight of light on rocks, and I talked a little bit about being careful with your clipping of your red channel in your histogram. And this is a case where I think you have really the optimal exposure. We got really wonderful glow on this rock, but it doesn't look like we're overexposed on the red channel. I think it's just a nice, brilliant color. I like the light in the foreground there with a little bit of grass. Here again, we don't maybe have the most optimal clouds, but they're subdued in this case. That rock is so big and so bright and powerful and so commanding of the image that the clouds in the background, though they could be distracting, they aren't in this case. And they're nice and soft and out of focus. And so I think they just blend in well to the background and kind of subdue that blue color so that glowing orange of the rock can really be the star of the image. So really nice on this one. Like the composition. So I give this one a 10.
Okay, so we've got 5 or 6 images here. We need to go back to the building. And this is from Dan Greenberg.
Okay, yeah, so that was a picture I took last year in Astoria, Oregon on a photo trip. Astoria, Oregon, if you haven't been to it, it's right on the Columbia River, right on the border with Washington. It's a really great spot actually for a photo trip. And so we were just cruising around at night because I wanted to use my fast lens and see how well it worked. Even though at this particular point, this was an f5.6 exposure, handheld for like half a second kind of thing. And the really cool thing is it shows you the difference between a picture 10 years ago and then this one as far as technology increase, because this one didn't need HDR. This one, you get all the detail just out of one exposure and playing with sliders a little bit. So that's it.
Thank you, Dan. This is Golden Hour Orb from Matt Hazelgren. And again, on this one, he didn't leave any comments about it, but and I know that you mentioned something about, Golden Hour, all these images were checked for the metadata, to make sure that they were golden and blue hours. So
okay,
this definitely was, but yeah, I can see that, if the background was a little more lively, a little more golden, shall we say, it maybe would fit better. But
Hey, Carl.
Yeah.
I have a question for the judge. It's not my image. You scored it a 9, but the last thing you said was, and I'm not sure why I didn't give it a 10.
Yeah, I think, I try to, I guess with my judging, I try to say like a 10 is the image I think is just, ready to print out on the wall. I just would love looking at it every day. And I don't mind spiders or, I like creepy little things. But to me, it didn't fit that. It didn't rise to that occasion of it. Just wasn't something I look at and go, yeah, nice image, solid image, good composition, good technical, whatever. But it's maybe not interesting enough to me to warrant something I would put on my wall and look at every day. So to me, that's a 9, and maybe that's my personal bias, and some different judge might judge it differently. But and maybe to me, it's some of those white bokeh spots on the bottom and off to the left. Maybe a little bit too bright, a little too distracting. So it's one of these things that's kind of hard to put my finger on exactly why it wasn't a 10 versus a 9. So different night, maybe I would score it differently, but.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Place of Rest, this is Ron Schaller.
Yes, that was taken near Westcliff. Friend and I had permission to go down on a ranch. We were actually waiting to do some Milky Way photography, so we're just kind of scouting around and came upon this scene, and I liked the more foreground in the front just to show it's sort of its place out in the middle of nowhere. And I think it was still, working vehicle on the ranch. I don't know if they swiped it from the Army or
Army surplus or something. Yeah,
it's not that old actually.
Yeah. So anyway, it is what it is.
So that's a nice find to find a vehicle like that. Morning at Bridge Mountain. This is Fred Stearns.
Yes, this was taken before the crowd centered upon us in Zion. I don't remember how I actually positioned that tree in the foreground. But I do know that I was walking back and forth trying a whole bunch of different shots. This is the one I like the best. And yes, I did lighten the foreground on this because it was too black and I couldn't see any detail at all.
All right, good job. Yeah, that was a good choice.
Thank you, Fred. And Sand Dune Magic, this is Oz Fenninger.
Yeah, this is taken at White Sands National Park or Monument. Anyway, just short before sunset, I liked this a lot and I thought I'd share it with you. And I'm glad our judge liked it as well.
Which park, Oz?
It's always a bonus,
White
isn't it?
Sands.
When the judge likes it too.
Yeah.
Now, Oz, do you have any idea why you got those long striations in the middle of it?
So the ripples, which you usually see on a sand dune, are sand that's not very firm. So it's a sand that can move in the wind. And then the other parts, I think, are sand that have been compacted and finally exposed due to erosion. That's my feeling.
How big is that area?
5 to 10 feet, something like that. It's not super small, but not super large.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
It was quite unusual.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering if somebody was dragging something along on the sand that made those marks.
How's this camera?
Okay.
Pretty hard, because otherwise.
No, it's all due to erosion and different densities in the sand.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting photo. And this last one, Fajada Butte, is from Bill Rothenmeyer. I don't see Bill on Zoom, and I guess he's not in the room either. The only note he put was taken at Chaco Canyon. Very nice image.
There's a couple other ones.
All right, well, that is our competition evening.
Thanks, Andy.
Just a little break.
Fred, you want to stop sharing so that we can see the room again, please? Thank you. Now, before we go running away here, Greg, do you have any last minute tips, hints, words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us?
No, I mean, yeah, hopefully I share a lot of good ideas tonight. I guess it's just really, as you look at your images, and I know I'm guilty of this too. You see something and you just like all these different elements and you want to include them all because they're all important to you for some reason, or you just think they're all interesting. But sometimes you just need to learn to refine your own work and say, I know I like all 5 things in this image, but if only 3 of them are the real stars of the image, do I really need the 4th and the 5th things? And if the answer is maybe not, then that's when you consider just cropping that out. Even though you're like, oh, but I wanted to show that extra mountain, the extra car, or that extra building or whatever. Sometimes it's just not in the cards, sometimes just the image just doesn't accommodate those extra things. So learn to edit your own work and edit down as necessary. And again, we've had a lot of stuff with nature, and you can't always control nature. It's not going to be exactly like you want. And you could be a photoshopper and make nature what you want it to be. I don't prescribe to that philosophy. So I think everyone's really done a good job here of trying to make the best of the situations they came across. So yeah, just really good job, but just watch your edits and make sure you only include the stuff that's really the best stuff for the image. And if the other stuff's not a supporting element, it's not a supporting actor, then get rid of it, crop it out or zoom it out.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you for those words of wisdom. And our judge, our last competition, hit upon something else that somebody asked a question. He goes by 222 theory.
Okay.
Revisit the image after 2 days, after 2 weeks, after 2 months, and then you get a fresh look at it, a little more critical eye, perhaps, and that can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's definitely images I'll go back to in my catalog that I've never processed, thinking they weren't that great, and decided that no, they're actually really great, or vice versa. Some image I've marked 5 stars in my catalog, I go back and Say, what was I thinking? That's not a
Exactly.
5-star.
Yeah.
That's
I
a
think probably all
4-star
of us
rating
have done that. Yeah.
at best. So yeah, that's definitely important because a lot of times, we walk away from a photo shoot. And sorry, my eyes are blurry even when I'm not looking at anything in particular. A lot of times, you walk away from an image, a photo shoot from just euphoria, right? You had a really good time, you had your great conditions, or you're out there with your camera club friends, you just had a great time. And so a lot of times I can put the kind of rosy colored glasses on you. And you come away, you think, wow, these images are great. But sometimes it's that emotional piece that's maybe clouding your judgment. So yeah, coming back and revisiting them sometimes it allows you to be more critical and objective. I saw a podcast once of some photographer, and she said she won't look at images she's taken for weeks, sometimes months. And it's because she says, if I have a good shoot, if I have a good experience, I want to ride that euphoria for as long as I can. I don't want to go look at my images and then be disappointed I didn't capture the feeling that I was having. So if she didn't, she'd rather learn about that a month later after she's enjoyed a month of, reminiscing of how great a time she had. So I don't quite have that discipline to wait that long to look at my pictures. I'm eager to look at them. But yeah, there's definitely something to be said for that 2-2-2 philosophy. I like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are in that camp where we get home. It's like you're just excited to kind of look and see what you got. So. Alrighty. Do we have any questions from anybody on Zoom or in the room before we get out of here?
We said one last thing, Greg. At some point, Carl, do we have Greg's email and contact info?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, only reason is, Greg, is since you're into car stuff and stuff like that, I just like that talk. And you're only in where, Loveland, you said, or Longmont?
Longmont, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, because we should maybe get together sometime. Just
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, if you look at my website, you'll see lots of old rusty cars on there. I do car shows too. I'll usually do detailed shots of the pretty cars. But I like the rust buckets. I've been to Old Car City in Georgia many times. That's probably like one of my favorite places in the country.
That's a favorite spot for a number of people. Yeah, Dan, if you go to Greg's website is imagesunderfoot.com.
Okay.
And I'm sure you can contact him through there.
Yeah, my email is the same. It's images underfoot, all one word, @gmail.com.
Okay.
There you go.
All righty. Well, thanks.
Yeah, love to get together.
Wonderful. See, that's what our club's all about, making connections.
Love it.
Whether we make connections within the club itself or elsewhere. So if nobody has anything else, then I think we're all set. We're all done. Greg, want to thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your wisdom and critique. It's very valuable, and we appreciate it.
Great.
And everybody who is not signed up already for the August 30th shindig, please email David at vicepresident@focuscolorado.com and get yourself in there and go out and have fun with the group. I think it'll be an interesting time.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you all for attending. Thank you for all the people who submitted, and enjoy the rest of your evening, folks.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, guys.
Thank you.